Welcome to 5-Star Company Culture with your host, Josh Cunningham. In this podcast, we explore how culture is the key to unlocking massive profits and unprecedented freedom. Discover insights, strategies, and inspiring stories to transform your life and business. Here's your host, Josh Cunningham.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the 5-Star Company Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Cunningham, of course, helping more entrepreneurs and business leaders all around the world achieve more freedom and profits by having a foundation of a 5-star company culture. We've got another wonderful guest for you here today. We're talking to Pete Mohr outside of Toronto. How's it going, Pete?
It's going great, man. I'm so glad to be here with you and with your audience as well today. Excited to the conversation.
Yeah, I always love these episodes where we have an opportunity to connect with other, thought leaders and entrepreneurs and people who are really helping people unlock that freedom in their life, right? Because we get into business not to just become a slave of this environment that we've created for ourselves that we have to show up to every day and grind for 80, 90 hours a week, but we get into business for freedom, right? So we can do the things that we want to with the people that we want to, when and how we want to. And again, Pete and I's message here is very much congruent with each other, and we're just very excited to have him on the show today. So, Pete, why don't you give our audience here a little bit of background into some of your professional experiences and some of the ways that you're helping business owners and entrepreneurs as well?
Yeah, well, Josh, I don't have a lot of hair on top of my head anymore because I've basically pulled it out over being a business owner for 30 years. But one of my things is I'm trying to reduce the frustrations that people go through and give them quick sort of, let's call them bypasses to some of the things that I've had to go through in my business career, and some of the people that I've worked with have had to go through too. And since 1994, I've owned bathroom renovation companies. I've had cleaning franchises. I've been a business broker, a licensed realtor and business broker. For the last 13 years, I've owned shoe stores here in outside of Toronto in Canada. And I spend most of my time these days helping other business owners with my company, Simplifying Entrepreneurship, get through these frustrations like you were talking about. You didn't get into business just to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week and make every single little decision in your business. You got into, and so many small business owners get habitualized into that sort of framework that you just lead it off with or led off with today, Josh. And I think that's interesting because we create these habits of making all these decisions because when we got going in business, we pretty much had to, right? And we've made the decision, for 1, 2, 3 years, whatever the case is, to get our business to a point where we actually have enough funds to hire some other people and align and assign some accountabilities. And often business owners still don't do that, even though they can, because they've just been habitualized into making all the decisions. So if everybody is always coming to you, asking you for approval on something, I think we'll probably have a good conversation here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you definitely hit the nail on the head there. A lot of people, their own bottleneck in their business. And, there's a lot of things that they don't understand of, people typically own all these responsibilities because they have a sense that, well, if I want it done right, I got to do it myself. And, I'm the only, person who's proven that I could create this model or do this thing or provide this service at this level. And where a lot of people get tied up in that frustration is the fact that, the underlying reason why a lot of people don't delegate is because they don't necessarily know the follow-up process behind delegation, which the big key word that I'm looking for here is accountability. And understand that you've got some great insights and some great stories to tell about, it's one thing to tell people to do something, but true business leaders are supposed to do exactly that: lead and inspire and empower. I always joke whenever I'm working with a consulting client and they talk about the frustration that they're having with something not taking place and to their level of standards in their business. And I say, well, what did that process look like? They're like, well, I told them to do it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. You go to Barnes and Noble, you go to the leadership section of the books, and all the books, are titled tell them to do it. Right. That's all there is to leadership. You just tell them to do it. Right. And they just magically get it done, and they don't need any accountability, and they don't need any support, and they don't need any type of leadership on your end. So talk to us a little bit about the experience that you've had with empowering your people to get them to take off some of that heavy lifting off your plate. And then what's most important is the accountability factor to make sure that it actually gets done.
Yeah. I'm a model person. I just love all these different models and frameworks. And, when you're talking about that, it's interesting. My main model for simplifying entrepreneurship it's called a heart model that I've created. And it's got 3 circles, 2 up top and 1 in the bottom, looks like a heart. And the idea is that right at the center of that heart is the empowered entrepreneur. And that's sort of, we won't go into that heart model today, but, working through these different models, the one that is coming to mind here around accountability really is this idea that I have called the CPA, and that you as a business owner should earn your CPA this year. And that's not your certified professional accountancy, as most people in business would think a CPA is. It's all around mastering these 3 things. 1, communication. 2, process management. And 3, accountability. Because when we master, and we're always working as leaders to master these 3 skills, when we're really good at communicating what it is we want, what things look like, how we want things to look like, how we don't want things to look like, and what our expectations are not just in our head, but they're actually communicated clearly and simply to everybody who's involved in the decision-making process. We started off talking about decisions because accountability is making decisions. Mm-hmm. Then what we do is we align process to that. And most often in small business, all of the process, and reason why people can't actually assign the accountability is because the process is in the owner's own head. Mm-hmm. And they don't know how to communicate it out, or they don't know how to get it out, or they don't know how to systematize it and put it in language that other people can replicate. And once they replicate it, once you do have your process managed and aligned and set out in a step-by-step format that people can understand. And by the way, people absorb information in different ways. Some people like to read information. Some people like to view information on a video format. Some people want to hear it. Some people need the tactile nature of actually physically touching and doing. So just by saying, hey, I've got it in a process manual, doesn't mean that that person's absorbed the information that you're looking to transfer the accountability to. So that's part of the communication piece, right? And then the last piece, the CPA, really, communication, process management. How are you driving your process? And we could do like 5 episodes just on that alone. But then getting into the accountability piece is, once you have that process, I use another sort of model called the 4 A's of accountability, and it's address it, assess it, align it, and assign it. So if you think of a process like bookkeeping, for example, if you're ready in your small business to get rid of bookkeeping, address it. Well, what needs to be done? How much do we have? Like, what is not being done? Assess it. What are all of the different things that I need to have prepared in order to give it to my accountant at the end of the year, whatever the case is. Align it. Where does it align on my accountability chart? Can somebody else in my office do this? Do I need to outsource it? Where does that align on the accountability chart? By the way, I'm hoping that you, the listener, has an accountability chart. And if you don't, that's a good place to start, because you need to actually map this stuff out so you can communicate expectations to everybody on your team. If the accountability chart's on your head, nobody knows what their expectations of what their job is, right? Mm-hmm. And then the last part is, so we've assessed it, addressed it, align it, and assign it. So now I'm saying, okay, Jim, you are the bookkeeper and you're responsible for this now. And they have the process in place. It's been communicated what good and bad looks like. Everything's in a nice little sort of setup that's clear, concise, and actionable, so that you can actually get out of doing the bookkeeping yourself. And I mean, that sounds simplistic, but ultimately you need to have sort of a system that rolls you through these different processes so that you can actually assign the accountability, or else you're going to make the decisions forever.
Yeah, no, that's a great model there. Address, assess, align, and assign. I love that. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, sure.
I think that the most important follow question on that is, so what happens when it doesn't get done? Right? We've addressed it, we've assessed it, we've aligned it, we've assigned it. 2 of the questions that I always challenge my team anytime there's frustration with standards not being met, and my leaders are coming to me and saying, hey, this isn't happening, this didn't get done. I ask them 2 questions. Number 1, did they know what was expected of them? And number 2, did you provide the tools and the resources for them to deliver what's expected of them? And so if you ever answer no to either one of those questions, then it's a leadership issue, right? You've failed to support and you failed to empower those people. But what if it is Yes, they knew it was exactly what was expected of them. And yes, I gave them all the tools and the training. Where do we go from here?
That's coaching. That's coaching moment.
Yeah.
I mean, that's when you've actually you've handed off, before you were doing 100% of the box. Now you're doing whatever level of that is, maybe 20% of the box, which is the final tick of it, or whatever the case, depending on where you are, depending on what level, because there's also levels of accountability, which we could also talk about. But the idea here is, depending on what level of accountability you've handed this piece of the puzzle off at, it's like, okay, well, maybe I need to make the final call, or maybe I need to have a little bit of a coach up, or maybe we need to hone in on our process because the process wasn't quite right. But if the process was quite right, like you mentioned, and they just didn't do it, that's an accountability issue. So that's basically, we need to have a conversation now. Getting back to the CPA, we're communicating now, right? Because you know what needs to be done. You have the authority and the accountability to do it, but it's not being done. So now you're the leader. So if you're on the accountability chart above them on the accountability chart, it's up to you to own this. And the owning of that is a communication, which is a conversation, which I call crucial conversations. You're having a crucial conversation with this person with expectations of what need to be done. But we started the conversation and saying, you have to give them the expectation of what good looks like and what bad looks like. And if you've done that, and they know that, then they should already know what the conversation is going to be about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where, most of the people I speak with, that's kind of where they get stuck. Is they're like, well, they didn't do it. What do I do next?
Yeah.
A lot of times people just jump in and do it themselves, and then now you get right back into the problem of working endless nights and endless weekends and just grinding it out. So it's not creating that freedom in your business. And so, when it comes to that step, when it comes to that crucial, you saw critical conversation.
Yeah. I call it Crucial Conversations, which, by the way, there was a great book out years ago called Crucial Conversation, which is where I always like that title. And so that's what I use.
Yeah. So Crucial Conversations, now we want to reframe the position of a leader as to not the person who's responsible for firing everybody, right? You don't want to just have all these conversations and go strike 1, 2, 3, you're fired. No. It's your responsibility as a leader to coach people up to the level that they need to be at. And if they determine on their own that they can't meet those needs, then most of the times it kind of works out to where they show themselves the door. I've had the experience over the last 10 years of, running a call center in the real estate space, hiring Texas A&M students. And over the last decade, we've hired over 400 Texas A&M students. And I brag that we've never fired anybody because we have systems in place where we communicate and we empower, and we have processes that people are driven to, and we hold them accountable to those expectations. And when it comes to those crucial conversations, again, we understand as leaders, it's our duty, it's our responsibility to coach people up to the level that they need to be. And we have had times in the history of the 400 people that we've hired where the person decided and they came to the realization that, you know what, maybe this organization just has too high of standards. Maybe I just have too much stuff going on. Maybe it's me that's just not going to ever be able to meet these standards. And we shake hands and we part ways. And we've never had to fire anybody. We've never had anybody file any, complaints with what's it called when people go out, lose their job and they file stuff with the government and try to get paid for it, whatever. We haven't had any of those issues. And I know that's an issue with a lot of people in business. So,
and it's because it's because of your 5-star culture. Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the name of the podcast. It's all around building this 5-star business, and part of that culture, part of that communication, part of your process, part of your accountability. They know it from the start when they get in the business. And if that doesn't change and waver all the way through, people will either align to that or they won't. And they will leave. They will just leave when they don't align. And you don't have to ask them to leave because they know they don't align. And if they don't like accountability and they see accountability coming at them, they'll leave. So, these are really interesting leadership things when we talk about this sort of idea here of accountability in your CPA. If you're communicating all the time within your meeting structure and within all of the different things, your training facility, your onboarding, all that stuff, that, hey, we have process, we hold people accountable, and, we're working towards what I call our promise and aligning our products, our process, and our people to that so that we can have the right amount of profit. If all of that comes into play and we're communicating that from day one, day 3, day 7, day 90 come and they aren't feeling that, they're going to leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately not everybody's going to fit into your corporate culture, and that's okay.
Yeah. I love all your models. I love all your, easy ways to understand these complex problems, And so if any of our listeners, if any of our audience wants to learn and connect with you a little bit more about, how to implement some of these strategies on their own, or find out a little bit more about the 4 A's of accountability. And I think I heard you allude to, what is it, the 5 P's?
Yeah, 5 P's. I mean, I've got my own podcast too called Business Owner Breakthrough, Josh, where I just dabble in these little sort of 5-10 minute conversations around these different concepts, because the name of my business and how you'll find me it's Simplifying Entrepreneurship. I know it's a long one, but Simplifying Entrepreneurship. And from that perspective, I just want to help people simplify all of these frustrations to get them through quicker than I had to, and then some of my friends had to in business, because you know what? If they can get there quicker, they're going to enjoy freedom faster. And we get into business. We've said it a few times on this episode, but I think it's pretty crucial. We get into business to have freedom. And if you're still working 50, 60, 70 hours a week in your business after a couple of years, then you've got some work to do. And whether you keep listening to this podcast, because Josh is going to bring on some great people that continue to have great ideas that will free you up from your stuff. So if you want, I've got a little download on the 4 A's of accountability that we talked about. It's a great little quick worksheet. You can download it at simplifyingentrepreneurship.com/4AS. So 4 A's.
Simplifyingentrepreneurship.com. Yeah.
/4AS.
4AS. Very good. Well, thanks so much for the free gift there, Pete.
Yeah, cool.
Any last thoughts or ideas on, 5-star company culture, simplifying entrepreneurship, becoming, moving from operator to owner? Any last thoughts?
I really do believe that if you are feeling frustrated, if you're feeling overworked, overwhelmed, if you start by working on better communication, better process management, and better accountability for 30 minutes a day before you start your day, that this time next year, you are going to have so much more freedom. You're going to enjoy so much, a much better life. You got into business for a better life. You do have to work on it, but don't let yourself get tied down into making those decisions every day and letting all the fires of the day sort of overwhelm your day, because if you do, that will never change. You've got to go ahead and change some stuff in advance so that you can start aligning some of the accountabilities and enjoying some of the freedom you deserve as a business owner.
Yeah, that's very well said. Appreciate all your insights today, Pete. And for our audience, have no fear. We're going to have more great content coming your way, more great guests to shed some light into your life on how to achieve more profits and freedom in your life. And it starts with having a rock solid 5-star company culture. Of course, there's lots of ways to do that. So, Pete, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, man. Been a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll catch you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to 5-Star Company Culture with Josh Cunningham. Embrace these lessons to elevate your business and join the ranks of thriving organizations. Stay tuned for more episodes. And until next time, remember, culture is the key to your success.